Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for the latest RVA757 Connects Virtual Innovation Spotlight webinar. My name is Greg Gilligan. I am the Vice President of Operations here at RVA757 Connects. We have an exciting program this afternoon and about a discussion that we'll have about Activation Capital in the start of Virginia. These are two of the Richmond region's leading entrepreneurship support organizations. The discussion will explore how the roles of Activation Capital and Startup Virginia play in the entrepreneurship programs across the Richmond region, as both of these programs expand their programming, their reach, their collaboration, underscores why a strong, aligned ecosystem is essential for long-term startup and innovation growth in the region. Before we begin the program, just a couple of housekeeping items. I'll give you a quick update on RVA757 Connects. Then we'll delve into today's topic. We'll leave some time for Q&As at the very end. Also, as a reminder, we do record all of our webinars, and the recording of this one will be on our website later this afternoon. If you have any questions, please use the chat function in Zoom, and we'll get to those questions or try to get to most of those questions towards the end of the program. RVA757 Connects is a nonprofit organization, so we rely on donations from for our operations. Here are our corporate sponsors. We really truly appreciate and recognize their support. Let me tell you a little bit more about RVA757 Connects. As I mentioned, we are a nonprofit whose mission is to improve the economic success and quality of life of everyone in the Richmond region, which we call RVA, and Hampton Roads, which we call 757. We're a coalition of top leaders representing businesses, higher education, and organizations. We're following a national model where nearby localities collaborate on initiatives that advance both regions. We're advancing the mega region from Metro Richmond to Hampton Roads as the I-64 Innovation Corridor. As you can see, we're pursuing several different priorities. We're helping the I-64 Innovation Corridor become a global internet hub. A little bit more on that, just a moment or so. We are also advocating for multi-use trails, such as Trail 757 in Hampton Roads, and the Fall Line Trail in the Richmond region, and the Virginia Capitol Trail between Richmond and Jamestown. And now they're extending that trail from Jamestown to Williamsburg, the plans to do that. You can read about all of our initiatives on our website at RVA757Connects.com. One of our priorities is to encourage collaboration and showcase innovation. And we're doing that a couple of ways, and this is one of them, hosting these Innovation Spotlight webinars. Mark your calendars for next month, Wednesday, February the 4th. We will hear more about how the Hampton Roads Sanitation District's Sustainable Water Initiative for Tomorrow, which they call SWIFT, is taking treated wastewater and turning it into clean, aquifer-ready water, which will strengthen the regional water security, counter saltwater intrusion, and prepare Hampton Roads for sea level rise and drought. More details on this particular webinar in a couple of weeks, but hope you will be able to join us for that. We also have a leapfrog strategy. This is our Global Internet Hub Vision 2035. Last year, we looked at 15 different future priorities to pursue. We surveyed our board and others about what a future vision could look like or should be. The response was to focus on these three key areas: creating a shared action framework, facilitating an AI revolution, and becoming a recognized, trusted, cyber-ready business corridor on the eastern U.S. seaboard. The word from the survey was to take this global internet strategy to another level, to double down on this initiative, to really make us unique, to make us a really unique global internet hub. We all have too many plans in our lives. What people are looking for is to follow a vision. And that's our Vision 2035. This is the future of our I-64 Innovation Corridor. This particular vision plan folds out to a 2-foot by 3-foot plan showcasing how the I-64 Innovation Corridor will stand out as the world's leading global internet hub, setting us the standard for how nearby regions join together to connect, power, secure, and transform data to drive productivity, innovation, and shared prosperity. On the other side of this plan is why our leapfrog strategy is so very important. Because today, comparison regions are outpacing our mega region in GDP growth. Regions with stronger digital infrastructure consistently outperform the US average in innovation and competitiveness. Digital infrastructure is a major driver of productivity and GDP growth. Achieving our Global Internet Hub Vision 2035 ensures our economy performs at peak potential. That our leapfrog strategy is just not to catch up, but to move forward and move ahead. Standing still means falling further behind. We unveiled our Global Internet Hub Vision 2035 plan during Convergence 2025 conference in Williamsburg back in November. We used the conference to follow the 5 pillars from the plan and organize sessions around those topics. We talked about powering data, connecting data, securing data, transforming data, and ensuring data benefits all. If you couldn't make Convergence or want to relive the conference, recordings from all the sessions at Convergence are now available on our website. Hundreds of people have viewed the sessions in the last 2 months. Go to our website under Convergence. Each session has a blue button, as you can see there. Just click on that to watch the video. As I mentioned, our top priority is to spearhead efforts to have the I-64 Innovation Corridor designated as a global internet hub. When you view the Richmond area and Hampton Roads together, combined, we have the core digital infrastructures in place needed to become a global internet hub. This particular 3-foot by 2-foot map explains visually how the I-64 Innovation Corridor becomes a global internet hub. Our mega region has subsea cables that come ashore in Virginia Beach, and more are coming. We have robust local and intercity terrestrial networks. We have a digital network rings. We have internet exchange, and we have data centers of all types and sizes, and more are on the way. On the other side of the map brochure explains what a global internet hub is, why it's important, and the strategies we are using to build one of these interconnected digital hubs. If you'd like to have an actual copy of this particular map brochure or our Vision 2035 map plan, please email me and let me know. Now let's turn to today's topic. Central Virginia startup ecosystem is entering an exciting new chapter. We'll learn more today about Activation Capital and Startup Virginia and hear how these 2 organizations are aligning efforts to accelerate entrepreneurship, innovation, and startup growth across the Richmond region. Activation Capital developed the Virginia Bio Plus Tech Park in downtown Richmond. In recent years, Activation Capital has played an instrumental role in positioning Central Virginia as a life sciences and advanced pharmaceutical manufacturing hub, securing millions of dollars in federal and state funding to attract, scale, and retain innovative life sciences companies. And plans are to build on that momentum in 2026 to further strengthen the region's innovative ecosystem. Activation Capital has been accelerating innovation in technology, biotechnology, and entrepreneurial sectors in the Richmond region for 3 decades by developing that Virginia Bio Plus Tech Park, where it provides lab space, runs accelerator programs, offers mentorships, and connects entrepreneurs with resources to commercialize research and build successful companies. Startup Virginia was founded in 2016, a decade ago. Startup Virginia offers resources, programming, and co-working space to help entrepreneurs and startup founders. It is the lead tenant in Capital One's Michael Wassemer Innovation Center at 1717 East Carey Street. It's now scaling its incubator programming, strengthening access to capital, and launching a second location in Henrico County that will open sometime later this year. Backed by a $1.47 million Go Virginia grant, along with significant investments from Henrico Economic Development Authority, the Richmond Economic Development Organization, and key corporate partners, Startup Virginia is building a stage-specific pathways to help entrepreneurs move from an idea to scale, including new initiatives tied to the forthcoming innovation, the Henrico Innovation Hub. So let's hear from today's two speakers. First, we'll hear from Mike Steele. He's the Activations Capital new president and CEO. He was appointed to the role leading the Virginia Biotechnology Research Partnership Authority. That's the official name of Activation Capital, back in August of 2025. Steele comes to Activation Capital with more than 2 decades of leadership experience in therapeutic, diagnostic, and research verticals across global markets. He steps into the role at a moment of growth, expansion, and national recognition for the organization. A Virginia native, Steele earned his MBA and a Bachelor of Science degrees from James Madison University. Richard Winch has served as Executive Director of Startup Virginia for the past 8 years. He was born and raised in Geneva, Switzerland. He attended James Madison University before returning to Switzerland to begin a career in private banking at JP Morgan. He later moved back to Richmond, where he spent 14 years at Chamber RVA, driving regional economic development. Before I turn this program over to our discussion this afternoon, I just want to remind everyone that if you do have questions, please use the chat function, and we will get to those questions later in the program. So now, let me start off by asking both Mike and then Richard to give us an overview of your organizations. Tell us a little bit about, Mike, give us a little bit, provide an overview of Activation Capital, its history, its role in developing the 34-acre Virginia Bio Plus Tech Park, and other organizations. So, Mike, why don't you take it away and tell us a little bit more?
No, it sounds great. Great. Thanks, Greg, and delighted to have this opportunity to share my story and as well as Activation Capital. This is a picture of our biotech center where our corporate office is housed. We also have 10 wet labs and 22 office space for our entrepreneurs that are members of our organization. Can you advance to the next slide, Greg? Yeah, so as Greg mentioned, we were originally set up in the early 90s as an authority. We also operate a 501c3 that handles a lot of our granting activities. And originally, if you look in the upper left-hand corner, it was originally to set up the park, which we did. But we don't actively manage the park. That's not our role today. But we did issue bonds. We constructed several of the buildings. All of those buildings are now in private hands or VCUs or the Commonwealths. So while we don't actively manage the park, we certainly work with all of its stakeholders. It's 7 buildings, 1.3 million square feet, well over 1,000 employees. So we're certainly involved with that community, but we don't manage the park. Then if you move into the 2000 kind of 10s to 20 area, we kind of focus in the center part of this, which was innovation ecosystem catalyst. For example, we funded a lot of other entities within the greater Richmond area, including Lighthouse Lab, Dominion Energy, Innovation Center. We were involved with that. Startup Virginia, Richard will speak a little bit more about that. 757 Connects, the Alliance for Building Better Medicine and things of that nature. So we have always served that role as being a catalyst to other organizations and as well as filling gaps. If you look in the 2020s, and we all know this from COVID, we really wanted to focus on the advanced pharmaceutical manufacturing cluster. We all realized when COVID hit how much of our reliance was on drugs and APIs, active pharmaceutical ingredients, that came outside the US. A lot of them, especially the generics in China and India, and there was dramatic shortages all the time, but certainly highlighted during the COVID era. And that led to a group of like-minded entities, including Activation Capital, and too many organizations, 16 other organizations that got together and through a grant from Go Virginia started putting together a plan of how we can reshore and have a stable supply chain right here in the U.S. for all these vital medicines. That culminated in Activation Capital taking a lead initially in the grant in a planning grant, and through the federal government, 55 or so million dollars across 6 projects to set up this cluster that includes Flow, Civica, and Medicines for All, and a number of other stakeholders, including area economic development. And that's been a tremendous success, and it's been accelerated with all the recent news, the 13 billion and increased funding from other pharma coming to the organization or coming to the area. If you take one more slide, the next slide. So if you look at even though our focus has evolved over time in the areas that we look at, it always is focused in kind of these 3 points. Entrepreneurship programming, which I'll highlight a little bit on the next slide, space making, originally setting up the park, but also serving as a incubator for companies that are looking to take their technology and commercialize that, and as well as ecosystem development. All the things that we did on the federal and state grants for the advanced pharmaceutical cluster, setting up other like-minded organizations and things of that nature, constantly looking at road mapping and finding gaps in our ecosystem, how to get from kind of good to great, if you will, to quote Jim Collins. We always looking for opportunities to jump in and lend a hand to do that. If you go to the next slide, while the Alliance for Building Better Medicine, which had its roots within Activation Capital, it was recently spun out, and our focus has turned really to the entrepreneurship ecosystem. And if you look at it, I won't go through this in detail, but what we do is make sure we meet entrepreneurs wherever they are. If they're a researcher that has a great idea, say at VCU or Virginia State or one of the other local university systems, whether it's an entrepreneur doing things on their own, if it's a early stage company that has an idea, we meet them wherever they are, and we try to design programming and provide resources. If they need space, we have wet lab and office space. If they need training, hey, they're a researcher by training, but they want to become the CEO, we have training to get them prepared on how to put together business plans, how to convey their vision for what they want to do with their technology. We have programming that gets them prepared for fundraising. We introduce them, make connections, and all those kind of things. And the latter part of 2024, we had our Frontier BioHealth, which we showcased some of these companies to investment in other ecosystem communities. And then if they have a great idea and they want to commercialize it, but they need experienced leadership to partner with them, we have our Pioneer Connect program, where we look at seasoned people that have successfully exited companies to partner with them to take to bring their technology to life and make it commercializable. So for me, just to end on that note, as Greg mentioned earlier, I grew up in Virginia. Been in biotech career for 20 plus years, really 30. And when I matriculated out of the system, it wasn't a lot of biotech back in those days. And I ended up leaving the state, living first in North Carolina, then Georgia, then the greater Boston area, most recently in the Princeton, New Jersey area. And when I moved back to Virginia, I was looking for ways, how can I make it better for the next generation of folks coming out so they can practice their craft or develop their technologies that in the ecosystem here without having to go abroad. And with all the tailwinds that we have now, the state supporting, farmers coming in, it's a great time to be here, and we're very excited to be a part of it. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Greg.
Great. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Now we will talk. Richard, could you give us an overview of Startup Virginia and like how many startups do you have, that kind of stuff?
For sure. We'll quickly go through the deck and then make sure we have plenty of time for questions. So if you can get to the next slide. So Startup Virginia is a nonprofit high growth business incubator. We have a similar mission to Activation Capitals, but our focus is more on the gaps, and we're going to dive more on the different types of how we in Central Virginia and how we serve all the different industries. But essentially, we support an engaged community, have programming, targeted resources, and amazing space, which we also have now the addition of Henrico, which we'll dive into a little later. So we really like to focus, spend most of our time on our programming because that's what is a lot of interest to our founders. We have two focus areas. One is our pipeline initiatives, and we have three kind of programs focused on that. One is our Idea Factory program. So if there's anyone in Central Virginia or frankly Virginia that wants to do some customer discovery, has an idea, an aspiring entrepreneur that has an idea and wants to validate it, we have a hybrid 7-week accelerator program just to do that program. It's become one of our most popular programs and is a great source to get aspiring founders to see if they're ready. What we found in the early stages of Startup Virginia is that it was really hard to help entrepreneurs with ideas without them doing the necessary customer discovery. So this has been a fantastic program. We've completed 12 cohorts, and we've got our next cohort opening on January 12th. So if any of you have ideas and want some help and a great program to validate it, then please go ahead and apply for that. Also like to note that one thing that we're super proud of is that if you complete the Idea Factory program, you want to continue to work on your idea and that your idea is scalable, then we do offer scholarships, which I'm very proud of in the region, in our incubator. And then we have great online programming. But our bread and butter is our incubator. We split those into different stages. We focus on education. We have a great list of mentors and corporate partners. We have access to national resources. You also have programs specifically on investment readiness, and we have amazing space, both at the Michael Wassman Innovation Center and then also at the Henrico Innovation Hub, which will open later this year. So to actually put those into numbers, because that tends to be a lot more impactful, this is data at the end of 2025, and it's pretty similar. We're capturing the data now for end of 2024. We're capturing data for 2025 right now. But we ended 2024 with 91 companies, of which 57% were led by women veterans or BIPOC. As you can see here, we're very industry agnostic, with 39 with predominantly SaaS. But as you can see, we also have had quite a lot more physical products join our incubator in 2025. One effort, which our Go Virginia grant is helping us go a bit deeper in, is our stage-specific programming. As you can see, we have 34% in the Ideate, 43% launch, and 23% in the Grow program. And I think we're going to dive into that a little later. But I'll focus on the cumulative impact since we've been founded in 2016 and moved into the Wassman Innovation Center in 2018. We incubated 261 companies. They cumulatively have earned $526 million in revenue and had an economic impact of $421 million and a capital raise of $315 million. And this is just one small organization in the Central Virginia ecosystem. And it's just a great example of why entrepreneurship and supporting entrepreneurs is so important. Lastly, we're very excited, thanks to a Go Virginia grant and a great partnership with Henrico, EDA, Richmond Economic Development, and a list of our donors to be launching a new innovation hub we closed on the building late last year, and we're now in the process of coming up with all the designs. So here's a little sneak peek of what it looks like. It's going to be a total remodel of an existing space in Willow Lawn. So this is some pictures of the exterior. We're working on the finer details in the interior right now, so I didn't want to divulge too much about that. But it's going to be similar to the Wassman Innovation Center, Class A office space. Have 9 offices, room for co-working, and also some indoor-outdoor space for events. That's pretty cool. We're so excited.
So Richard, while I've got you here, this is a great slide. Can you give us a sense of the early connection that you guys have with Activation Capital?
Yeah, so I think Mike did a good job quickly describing it, but just so everyone has a good sense on how Activation Capital is involved, this map, when we founded Startup Virginia, when our founders started Startup Virginia, was not as well organized as this, and it's definitely a lot smaller. And during for us in 2018, 2017, when we were launched, one of our biggest challenges or one of our big question marks is how are we going to build a sustainability plan or a financial nonprofit model. And thanks to the Activation Capital EDIF grant, which Lighthouse Labs and Dominion Innovations that have also benefited from, we were able to. They gave us a grant that we were required to match, and that really allowed us to really one attract individual donors and corporate partners, and use those relationships to help us scale over the last 8 years. And now we're a nonprofit with a $1.2 million annual budget and a team of soon to be 7. So, Activation Capital really has laid the foundation for everything that you're seeing on this map. That EDIF fund was really transformational. It's a good example of how capital to initiatives to support entrepreneurs can really make a big difference in our region. So we're very grateful to them, and I know other organizations in Richmond are too. And we look forward to the partnership going forward.
Great. Let me, for both of you, now we're going to do kind of a fireside chat conversation stuff. Give me a sense for both of you. This is kind of for both. What do you guys see ahead for both Activation Capital? What do you see ahead for Startup Virginia? And what do you see ahead for the broader innovation ecosystem here in the region?
Well, I think, I'll start and then hopefully Mike can come on. I think what's really exciting, Activation Capital also with Go Virginia helped with a resource guide for our region to identify gaps. And what came out of that was that I think we're in a really healthy space when it comes to tech, scalable, and life sciences companies. You have Activation Capital that are focusing on life science from early stage to late stage. You have Dominion Energy Center that are doing the same for energy and sustainability initiatives. You have Startup Virginia that cover a lot of the rest, and Lighthouse Labs that focuses on the whole state, but has a more accelerated program to later stage startups. So I think we've done a really good job of having a clear pathway from idea all the way to exit, and a really impressive array of programming, mentors, and space to support all these entrepreneurs. So now our opportunity is, how do we communicate those offerings? How do we make them accessible? How do we continue to grow and make them impactful? And frankly, there's also an opportunity to do a bit more of that with the small business Main Street side of work, which I know that there's an organization with Heather with 1770 Collective is working hard on to try and add a bit more structure there.
Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, so for me, it's interesting coming in at the time that I do, because I don't have, I've been away for a long time, so I don't have all the history, but it's an exciting time to be here. So many new developments going on, and so much support. One thing that I didn't mention in my overview was Project Vital, which was a $15 million grant from Go Virginia through Department of Housing and Community Development as well, that worked at 3 of the hubs, Charlottesville, Seville Bio, ourselves, and Roanoke Blacksburg Innovation Allowance. And it was instrumental in us creating a lot of the programming that I described in entrepreneurship, along with some other grants. And so we are in a place where Haleon has announced, a huge their R&D center, consumer over-the-counter kind of drugs. We've got all the great things that's going on with Flow and in Civica down in the Petersburg, Fralin Institute down in Roanoke, the Manning Institute in Charlottesville. So it's a tremendous amount going on. We enjoy 6 R1 universities. We have 2 comprehensive cancer centers in the state. VCU is approaching $600 million in annual research funding. A big chunk of that is in life sciences. And so when I think about the ecosystem, it's a great place, and it's a lot of excitement. And now we have to think about that Jim Collins flywheel. How do we get from really good to great? And it's a constant. It's not a set roadmap. Things change. opportunities present themselves. We identified a lane that was absent, being in life sciences, incubation, and ecosystem. Richard's team, Debbie with Lighthouse and others, they are focused, more broadly. We wanted to fill this gap in life sciences, but as the ecosystem has grown so rapidly, it's going to create gaps, and it's going to be opportunity for organizations like mine to step in and fulfill those gaps. And the key tenets for us is, one, think about what's needed. Two, create feedback loops with the organizations that are coming into the state, the organizations that are here, working with entrepreneurs, but also looking at what feeds that funnel. I tend to think of things as a sales funnel. We want to create more quantity and quality of technology and entrepreneurship in the top of the funnel. Our job is to help matriculate them through and connect them and provide the resources necessary for them to be successful. So it's an exciting time, but it's still a lot of work to do.
Mike, you mentioned some of these recent announcements, like the AstraZeneca, Merck, Eli Lilly expanding their manufacturing operations here in Virginia. So can our region continue to expand the life sciences and biotechnology hub as a hub? Is there enough out there? And how do you guys see Activation Capital shaping that future in biomanufacturing?
Yeah, so a few things are at play. One is it's an overnight success that's been years in the making, quite frankly. And it started with a lot of the early efforts to kind of organize like-minded people that developed into, the Advanced Pharmaceutical Cluster Initiative, now with ABBM, the Alliance, taking a lead in that role. So it's, once you have momentum, which is the hardest part, getting that inertia to get the flywheel moving. We've accomplished that through the efforts of, so many people, hundreds of people working in concert together. So that's great. And once these new companies with all the 13 billion and the jobs and their needs, that's going to create an acceleration event to do that. And while certain things are pretty clear, I mean, when you look at any hub, talent is at the top of that. And as I mentioned, we have a strong, academic institutions here to supply that. Governor Youngkin recently, announced the $120 million training center for advanced pharmaceutical manufacturing. That's key, because if we don't get that right, you will have problems, and you will have a legacy or a reputation that you have to overcome. So between that and what Flo and Civica and the state has done in the community college system for technicians, the stackable credentialing, all those things work in concert to make sure that piece is correct. But drawing it closer to what we do is, you look at any hub, whether it's Kendall Square in Boston or wherever, you have to have a dynamic innovation cluster ecosystem and close access to academic institutions, entrepreneurship, those feedback loops, the ways to pressure test, the health systems, which my team has been working with Mark Levy and his group and others to say, not only to pull technologies out of what they are doing, but also to pressure test for our members. This is how your product might be held or reviewed, or the impact that it'll have in the actual system. So all those things together are going to create a further tailwind and accelerate the flywheel. And organizations like ourselves, the state, we just have to make sure that we're following our roadmaps and then adjusting accordingly to make sure that we have the resources there when they're needed, in the right place in the right time.
Richard, let me ask you, in terms of, I'll start with Virginia. Seems like you guys are entering a major new phase of growth. So what's driving this growth, this expansion and stuff? And, how are you going to help, your founding companies across Central Virginia?
Yeah, I mean, so we definitely, it's been a really fun 8 years, and as I mentioned, we've supported over 280 companies and helped touch 19,000 entrepreneurs. And we learned a lot during that time being a startup ourselves. And one thing that we really wanted to focus last year and through this Go Virginia grant is having, clearer pathways for entrepreneurs, and better alignment between the programming and the stages that are within our incubator. We need to continue to focus on is strong access to networks and capital around. So really what our expansion is about is getting from entrepreneurs from idea to through growth, and not just offering, one space or one program. It's a continuing of offerings depending on where you are, within your cycle as an entrepreneur. And the Go Virginia grants is, it kind of gave us an opportunity to step back and intentionally think about how do we plan to do that. So we're really looking forward to putting that grant to action and, really helping entrepreneurs.
And so, Michael, in that same vein, what's next for Activation Capital here in 2026? Do you have any initiatives, and how will that impact our region?
Yeah, so obviously we do. So we've been very successful in securing grants, and a lot of those grants, in addition to supporting other stakeholder organizations, which will follow through on those as well, is to really fine tune and accelerate our own internal entrepreneurship programming. And there's a whole host of initiatives where we're looking at the quality of the IP coming out of the academic institutions, our Pioneer Connect programs, our training, getting researchers excited about entrepreneurship, working with Mike Rao at VCU, for example, to really align interest on their tenure tracks for researchers to really focus on commercializing all this great success that we've been having. But there are also some challenges. One of the things that's identified when I started going around talking to people is like when companies and some of our existing members right now are facing this too, is since we're not already an established hub, like when I was in Jersey, you can't throw a rock and not hit a biotech park of some kind. And there's a lot of entities there, some exit, some grow on to become fully integrated companies. We don't have that here. So when companies kind of grow out of our space, they often look at Class B flex space, for manufacturing, laboratory research, and so forth. We don't have a lot of that there. That's one area of focus that we'll be delving into. While we've been very successful at grants, we don't get appropriated from the state per se. So to continue these programs, we have to have a sustainability plan. So that's, we don't want to build something and have it go away. So we want to build it. And now we need to say, hey, what are our options for sustaining what we're doing and building upon it? And for our member companies, a lot of the early stage companies, they're the highest risk, they're pre-VC kind of funding. A lot's going on in the federal government. If you look, I'd venture to say, don't quote me on this, but probably 70% of therapeutics that get developed started with NIH funding in some shape, form, or fashion. The remainder coming in-house from pharma companies. There's been a big headwind, if you will, on NIH kinds of funding, SBIR grants and the like. Connecting them with angels and early stage seed funding is another one. We don't have an established, widespread life science focused. Even though we have some, it's not quite as to the caliber or the volume of the amount of funding that North Carolina, Massachusetts, New Jersey has. So there's plenty of work to do, but we're optimistic about our ability to help execute it, to bring solutions, and work with our partners to do that.
Richard, talking about excitement, I'm excited about this new Henrico Hub, Innovation Hub. Tell me a little bit more. Tell us a little bit more about this. How does it differ from your main facility downtown at Shockoe Bottom? How's it going to work together? How will it be different? How will it be similar?
Yeah, I mean, the really important thing to know about the Henrico Hub is that it's really it's a component of the strategy and not the strategy itself, meaning that its purpose is to expand our offerings to impact more entrepreneurs. We've been very fortunate over the last six to 8 years to have a really good list of partners who have believed in us and who have contributed to us. A good example of that is VIPC in the state. It's a good example of how the Commonwealth and that organization believes in entrepreneurship and have been instrumental in our pipeline initiatives and building this out as well. So like the Go Virginia grant and partnership with Henrico EDA just allowed us to think bigger, to allow us to like build upon what we've done well, and hopefully more people will be able to access it in the whole of the region for not just Henrico because of that new additional building. We currently have 22 offices in the Michael Wasserman Innovation Center. They're all taken. Also important to note that our offices are about 50% subsidized and are month to month. Everything we built is to remove any barriers for entrepreneurs in the Richmond region. So the hub, will be collaborative workspace, also will be private offices. It's really built to be an extension to what we're doing. And then our goal is to hopefully move in there at the end of 2026. And we'll spend some time this year to see how we can complement. But we see this truly as an extension of our community and hopefully impact more entrepreneurs in our region.
So let me ask you guys some questions from our audience. The first one up is from Ron Carey, my good friend and former colleague. Ron asks, how does our startup market compare to other cities of similar size? Can you give us a sense?
Yeah, so that's a really good question because I think it's really easy to think of startups and just think of San Francisco, New York, the Chicago, like some of the true hubs where capital is deployed and startup ecosystems are built. But the fact of the matter is, most middle market cities are very much like us. I actually would venture to bet that we're a lot more organized thanks to those, thanks to our partners than most regions. The fact that in Richmond you can go through our idea validation program and get a scholarship and have access to Class A office space, mentoring, coaching for free is pretty remarkable. And I don't know how many regions have done that. And I think now that, we have DIC and Activation Capital really focusing on life science, the pathway and the structure is really good. So, we're really, really in a great position to scale. I would say, there is opportunity. Raleigh is a great example, was a city of our size and has really leveraged innovation, life sciences, technology to grow and scale. I think the opportunity that we have is to continue to work with our universities and really think long and hard about how do we increase capital to these early stage founders, because I see that as the next opportunity for our Commonwealth and our region.
Yeah, and I agree with what Richard's saying, and if you look at what we see is the same kinds of things. I mean, I think we're positioned favorably, and we have all this tailwind, from the recent announcements and things of that nature. But it's not without its challenges. I mean, funding is always a challenge for young startups. Having space and programming and connections. So we fulfill that, but it's still something. I mean, VIPC's doing Virginia Catalyst. Our members have benefited from funding from both of those organizations as well as others. And so, I know one of the things that I'm working to do is expand upon that and getting to know Commonwealth Angels and developing relationships. Do we need to have, we had a venture fund at one time, but right around COVID, do we need to resurrect that? Do we need to work with other partners? So essentially, one of my focus not only is learning the ecosystem, but also our members and understanding. I'm meeting with one this afternoon, as a matter of fact, to understand what are their needs. And then putting all that together in a strategy that's going to inform kind of the next year to 2 years of what we're going to focus our energies on. But it's always to what Richard spoke to, is removing barriers, because if you look at life sciences, it's almost all FDA regulated. I used to host 30 FDA inspections a year at one of my prior companies. It's a very regulated. It takes a long time. It's not an app on a phone per se. It's regulated, so there's a long lead time. Therapeutics take 10 plus years to get to market, things of that nature. And so there's a lot of obstacles to overcome. And Richard and my job in a lot of ways is figuring out what they are and then coming up with solutions to help our stakeholders be successful.
Another question from the audience is, what kind of connections or programs are your organizations looking to activate in 2026 that don't exist today? And you talked about some of these, but they're trying to figure out. Maybe trying to. The question also goes on to say that, are you trying to, for example, are you trying to connect with other geographies? Are you bringing in targeted expertise? Are you talking about partnerships?
Yeah, I mean, this is 757 as well, but I think VIPC have an ecosystem department. So basically, they have a fund that supports entrepreneur support organizations and do a really good job to make sure that all regions in the Commonwealth are talking with each other and supporting each other. So we leverage that. We're also, because of our geography, we're very close to 757. We work hard with Paul Noldy's group, 757 Collabs, 757 Ventures, Angels. And they have a very similar infrastructure than we do. So are also perfectly poised to scale. For us at Startup Virginia, our focus next year will be to really lean into stage-specific offerings within our incubator and continuing to impact aspiring entrepreneurs with our Idea Factory program. The Go Virginia grant will allow us to hire a startup advisor, which we just recently did, provide fractional specialized support. And the big area, I think, for us that we need to focus on is capital readiness, education, and access to capital, and working with partners across the state, like you said, those angel groups, to really have an honest conversation of where we stand and how can we do better.
Yeah, Greg, and as I mentioned, we think of things in concentric circles. So, we want to maximize the entrepreneurship that comes right here in the greater Richmond area. But, as we've done in other programs, we have some organizations come from outside the state. They're attracted to the programming. We've had programs where we work with the economic development organizations to attract companies from outside the Commonwealth, as well as matriculate ones and expand the ones that are in it. So, much the same things that Richard said is that, we've got to focus on sustainability ourselves so that we can continue to do these because, grant funding has been facing some headwinds, certainly on the federal level. So we want to make sure that what we put in place we can sustain, but also working, with our partners to be able to provide opportunities for our companies. I'm talking about the Class B flex space. So working with, one of the things that's come up repeatedly is when, all the area economic development groups, they have, opportunities for companies coming in, but it's not a huge, like Eli Lilly kind of site out in Goochland, but they still need, space, ready-made space. And if we don't have that kind of stuff here, then they move to the next state that does. So I think there's an opportunity. And we even met as a team this morning talking about getting together all of the area economic development groups, many of which sit, on our Activation Council board, as well as Paul Noldy as well. We have a relationship with Paul, and he sits on our board as well, to try to work together to start mapping out, hey, what are the kinds of activities that we can do to attract, cultivate, matriculate, and retain companies here in the Commonwealth.
Mike, you mentioned one of the barrier being for one sector is having enough lab space, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
But both of you, can you guys give me a sense of what are some of the biggest barriers that some of these startups have in trying to start up here? Either they move here or they are already here. To go from early traction to scale. I mean, what are some of the barriers? Is it that lab space? Is it funding? Is it having the right mentors? All the above? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'll take the first stab at it. It is all the above. I have such high respect for entrepreneurs because they're the ones I've worked alongside. Entrepreneurs that leveraged everything they had, mortgaged their houses to bring this idea to life and fruition. And there's lots of battles to do that. And in the life sciences area, certainly having space to conduct experiments and develop your technology, having feedback loops with the market, always important to say, hey, how valuable this is. It helps you construct your story and articulate that effectively. Capital, everything in life sciences is not cheap to do. And so you have to have the capital to do it. And so making sure that our companies, are prepared, think like an investor, because, while VCs are dynamic in that they know that they have to have a 5x kind of return on capital because not everyone is going to be successful. Not every one of their projects are going to be successful. So, but they have a very high threshold, increasingly so in today's climate, to be able to do that. So it is in all of the above, and so that's why we've organized ourselves in such a way to try to tap as many of those. And while we focus on our programming on the early stage, when somebody's deciding, hey, am I going to take this to the next level? Do I partner with a seasoned CEO or to do this in collaboration? We want to follow those companies all the way through to their logical conclusion and make sure that we've eliminated all the barriers that we can and work to do that.
Yeah, so just to tag on that, I think there's also a great opportunity for I would say the Commonwealth, not just Central Virginia, to try and be creative around funding for early stage startups. So you've validated an idea and you need maybe 25, 50, 75, 100K to continue to continue that validation. And the obviously the risk, the percentage of success at that stage is very, very low, but all it takes is one or two for it to pay back all the others. And we need to build up the risk tolerance in our Commonwealth so that folks can see that, or at least educate them that it's an asset class that could be interesting, or as a region, what do we do to help do that? VIPC do have some access to some grant funds, but we could definitely do with more people thinking that way. So I would say, just to try and make this investments into startups and more attractive, or education around making it an asset class for folks to consider in the future is an opportunity.
Now, to dovetail on that, Nancy Gurdon, down in Hampton Roads, she wants to know, talk about how, whether it's here in RVA, down 757, Virginia, whatever, what can we do to help these young growth companies when they choose to be here? How can we keep them here? What's working? What can be done to improve retention of these particular companies? A lot of times they'll start off here and then go elsewhere. So how can we keep them here?
No, I don't agree with that myth.
Okay.
Yeah, I truly don't. I think they're very attractive, rare for entrepreneurs because of technology, especially since COVID. They choose where to live. So the fact that we have a very desirable location in Richmond and the beach, and Nova and out west, like Virginia's, and I spoke to a realtor yesterday. All the people, like, there's a lot of people coming into town. Like, they're choosing where to live, and they're choosing to do work out of that location. So I think we're perfectly set up for that. And the fact that we have infrastructure to help people there if they decide to choose Richmond is awesome. So I honestly can't think of a startup. I know pre-COVID, there were definitely some regions that were incentivizing other startups to go to their region, but I don't see that anymore. If anything, what is happening is that folks outside of the Commonwealth are investing in our startups, and then if they're successful, we don't see the returns from that success because outside capital helped them grow. But physically, they're staying and contributing.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, in the life science area, you have a combination of both. Therapeutics, especially, a lot of times there's an exit around phase 2 of clinical, trial development. And sometimes those companies are lifted and kind of move, but a lot of the research will stay the same. The dollars deployed get reinvested in the local economy. And if you have enough of the infrastructure within the Commonwealth, there's no real incentive for them to leave. And even if maybe the AstraZeneca or Lilly or Merck, maybe sales and marketing, those kind of things, that gets commercialized through the mothership. The ongoing research and taking that research and catalyzing that into having research collaborations between, the companies and our academic institutions and the pharma companies, and basing that here locally, again, it just gets the flywheel spinning. And you look back at even a Boston. I mean, Biogen was a game changer there, many moons ago, and you can point to other companies and other places. So while you may not retain every single company, especially in the life science area, the ones that do stick and that become fully integrated, have a novel technology, a disruptive technology, which they all, practically do. That's where you have that ecosystem, and then all the other things that Richard talked about. I mean, look at what Haleon is doing here, and these companies moving in. They're moving here for a reason. They see, a business-friendly state. They see these, strong academic institutions. That it has the infrastructure to be successful. All the things that you need, the four legs of the stool that I described earlier, to have success. And that's what you build upon. So it's a numbers game. You're not going to win 100% of the time, but you win enough, and then that just, it feeds on itself and accelerates that flywheel. And then we look 5, 10, 15 years down the road. I mean, if we look at where we are now, and if you look back 5 years, nobody would have said, hey, we're going to have the life science, focus and infrastructure and success that we've had. They were talking back then, I'm told, hey, maybe we'll be successful in 10 or 15 years, and we've accomplished all this in the last 5.
Let me ask you both, what can we as a community, whether it's the Richmond region, Hampton Roads, together or whatever, what can we do as a community to really kind of promote startups, entrepreneurship? Richard, I remember, was it more than a decade ago, when Chamber RVA had those pitch competitions, and people were excited about those. Do we need to bring that back to help elevate the startup community, or what do you all suggest the community needs to do?
Asking the right person when it comes to pitch competitions. Unless there's actual people who are willing to invest in startups in that room, then yes, that 100% worth bringing back. But until you actually have people who are in that room that are willing to invest in them, it's not fair to the founder. So I do think events showcasing startups is always great. The more visibility we can give to them, the better. Especially, the other thing that's really important is for us to do better as a state to be their first client. Can we test their products? Can we be their first customer? Those are the kind of mindsets that can we be their first investor? That is more important than a pitch competition, personally. But the more visibility we can give our founders, especially those who are getting traction, the better.
Good.
Yeah, and I echo that, and just to dovetail, it's it depends on what your role is. If you're if you have had success in your vocation, whatever it might be, looking at investing in an angel fund for life sciences, for example, or fintech, or SaaS kind of solutions that are coming through Richard's shop. As my football coach used to say, when I was a kid, get a hat and get in the game. And so, we think about this day in and day out, but it takes a village, it takes a community. And while we're blessed with a bunch of different stakeholders, it took me the first couple of months to figure out what all the acronyms of all the organizations were across the Commonwealth. But everybody's like-minded, and they want to see the Commonwealth succeed, and they want the next generation of, whether it be entrepreneurs or graduates, to have not to be like myself and have to move away. And we're in a better position to keep them here than we've ever had. And now it's just a matter of, everybody kind of beating the drum, talking about what we have going for us, looking for opportunities to give advice, or to provide, funds, or make connections. Those are the kind of things that day in and day out are going to lead to our continued success and accelerate.
So let me end this with one last question for both of you. This is where you get your crystal ball out. So what do you think the startup ecosystem will look like in 5 years? what must change to get to that point? What do we need to do? What do you think it's going to look like? And what do we need to get to that?
That's a
I'll
really,
take a stab
yeah.
at it. So we're still in the early stages of building out our programming, and we have expectations in terms of the metrics we're generating and to fulfill the grants that we're doing. And I look at it as a funnel, the proverbial sales funnel. And so, working with universities and other entrepreneur organizations, how do we fill the pipeline, with better quality and more volume at the top of the funnel? And then, Richard and I and others are working, how do we help remove the barriers to matriculate them through? So I think based on, the momentum that we have and the kind of activities that we're doing, you know, we're meeting, the opportunity where it is, and we're developing this. And as our companies matriculate, we're going to be out there telling their stories, and that's going to feed the next generation and next generation. So I think that, we're going to be able to look back and say, gosh, look at how far we've come. We've, developed X amount of companies. It's created so many X amount of jobs. They've raised so much capital. Yes, it's a long lead time, but we're making steady progress to that. This is something we not only want to sustain, but build upon, because then the whole ecosystem starts to seeing, hey, this is creating opportunities for all of us, not just the entrepreneurs, but all the people that work at the companies that are generated from that.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that. I think that was absolutely perfect. If I had to have a dream, I would love to come back in 5 years and say, hey, do you see that fund that we launched and the amount of investments that they made and the impact that they had? That would be my dream.
Good, very good. Appreciate it, gentlemen. I appreciate it. Let me just quickly let people know as we're wrapping up our session here today. Again, if you have any questions about our organization or some of our initiatives, please go to our website, RVA757Connects.com. Remember that this webinar will be posted to our website in about an hour, so you can go back and review it, but forward it on to others. Let other people know what's going on in the startup community here in the Richmond region. Or if you have any thoughts about going and looking at any of our webinars that we've had since 2022, please go to our website, and they're all listed there, and you can watch the videos from those particular webinars. A reminder that next month on Wednesday, February 4th at noon, we'll do our next webinar about the Hampton Roads Sanitary District transforming wastewater into clean water. Be an interesting, fascinating discussion. Thanks again to Mike and to Richard. Thank you very much for your insights and your thoughts about the entrepreneurial ecosystem here in the Richmond region. Really do appreciate you taking your time today to do this. And also thank you to you all of you for joining us today. And hope you have a great day. Thank you again so much.
That's great. Appreciate the opportunity. Happy New
Thanks,
Year.
Greg. Appreciate it. Talk soon, Richard.
Talk soon. Cheers.